I'm Mark Wendling. The other gentleman who is the only one sharing his video right now is Derek Bain. And we co-chair the SABR Games and Simulations Committee. We thoroughly enjoy it. Tonight we have a guest, Jason Leonard. From my understanding and a little bit of reading, I understand Jason's taking some old games and he's bringing them to life again through programming so we can use Windows, etc. Not just limited to baseball. Jason, if you want to share your screen and let us see you, that would be
Sure.
nice.
Sure. Yeah,
We're
show off my
relatively
swag.
informal for those of you that haven't been to one of these before. So very shortly here, I'm just going to turn it over to Jason and he can talk about some of the stuff he does. If you want to ask a question, go right ahead. Anything you want to say, Derek?
Sure.
No, just Jason, welcome
Yep.
again. I've been doing the computer baseball sims going back into probably the mid '80s, so I was familiar with the original full count baseball, and then I guess probably around 94, 95, somewhere in that time frame, I came across version 6. So and it looks like you're like Mark said, you're bringing that one back or porting it so it's accessible. You don't have to use an emulator to access it anymore. So
Yeah. And that's kind of really that's just kind of like the first step or the first goal that I had with when I kind of got involved in the community for Lance's games. I just kept asking myself, like, man, it'd be nice if I could make this change. It'd be nice if I knew how this worked in the code. And there were a lot of elements like that that just kind of piqued my curiosity as a programmer and everything else. So when I got the opportunity to work with the source code, like obviously it was kind of like Pandora's box being open. So for me, I had to say, well, what's the most important thing to do? Because I mean, honestly, I would have loved to have just gone straight to the football game and just made the football game what I wanted. But I was like, what's the best thing for me to do first? Because I got to pace this. And I just said, I think what could help people is taking these games. They haven't been updated in a while, and I've seen a lot of people in the community, kind of struggle with using DOSBox, and I said, man, I think if I can just get something, they seem to be happy with the games even as they are, just the text and the basic features, and I'm like, there's an appeal there to you're kind of following the games just for the sports and the stats and the plays anyway. You can read the plays, the graphics are kind of an extra. And I just said to myself, like this, like people seem to be happy with that. Like if I could help them there, and if I could get something working like that I can maintain and update real easy, that would just be a win. So that's kind of where I'm just now getting to about a year and a half later, where might be a couple bugs out there, but I'm planning on kind of like squashing that all here in the next couple weeks and just getting like games out there that look like they used to, but run on Windows, obviously adding Mac and Linux because going back to the 80s, everything was in BASIC because all the computers could do BASIC. And that kind of changed over the years as the language has changed. But yes, I'm just happy to be there. Now I can look ahead, and I know back when it was late 90s, I know Lance was starting to look at how to take his games into Windows. And I actually have some of the source that he was able to give me, still had some of his work that he was doing for Windows and the football game. But I just know, like, I just felt like I know there's a lot of people that wanted that back in the day and asked about that, and they were trying to think about how they could do that before they kind of really lost a lot of their resources, and a lot of their following. But to me, it's just like that would be a bonus if I can get there, and I'd love to get there. But for now, like there's just having those games available to more people and then also adding to that the opportunity to make these games something that they haven't been, in 20 years, improving the programming's come a long way since then, and so have the sports. And the changes over the years have been pretty, pretty frequent. Things aren't, even football, I feel like I have trouble. It's my favorite sport, and I have trouble keeping up with the rules changes sometimes because it's just every 4 years there's something new, it seems like. So yeah, that's where I'm at, and that's what I've been doing. And yeah, like you said, the baseball, that's not the only game. Obviously, um, all of the ones that Lance had personally worked on were the ones that he had the code for. So um, I've kind of been working on all of them. I can kind of see now, like you were talking about playing full count in the 80s. I never really had the luxury of playing many of the games in the 80s. And even more so, I was never really a big follower of baseball. So when I did kind of get into some of the simulation games, I never really played the baseball games, but I know people always talked about how that was kind of like one of the flagship games for Lance Haffner. And I'll tell you, it wasn't until I started like working with it and trying to work with the code that I really saw how kind of true that was for its time. There was a lot of stuff it was trying to do and trying to balance, and the code was more complicated than all the rest of the games. The ideas of trying to get the climate data from a database and the research that went into some of that was far beyond what was being done for the other games. So um, I mean, I'll be honest, like that game specifically, working on the other side of it and actually like looking at the code and working with it, it's really, I still don't understand all what the code's doing just because there's so much of it that so many more calculations and things like that that just I can see why there was so much more love and effort put into it, because it's definitely more complicated than basketball and football.
And this is code that Lance stopped working on when late 90s, I think, was the last
Yeah,
revision, somewhere around there.
yeah. The last revisions, the last versions, I think were in the late 90s, 96, somewhere thereabout. And after that, he continued to kind of update the teams files, but as was kind of hinted to at the beginning of this, yeah, it was code. It was in basic, and he was still doing basic. So I kind of wasn't aware of that until I got it in my lap. He was still basically maintaining the basic code from the 80s and just expanding on it and keeping it, adding stuff to it. So um, you know, thankfully, some in the digital world, things really don't ever die. They just kind of like go away or go off to different corners of the internet. And so, there were people who, when Windows started modernizing, they you know, didn't like a lot of, the complications that came with programming for some of that. So they set out to recreate ways to still use basic code and compile it for Windows and other systems like Mac. So, thankfully, I've been able to it's kind of provided me an opportunity to kind of have an easier path to getting this done, especially being more of being much more of a programmer than a sports person. I mean, I love sports and, follow different sports, but I mean, compared to most people I know, I like programming and computers is like my number one thing. So having that in basic and being able having programs to work with that in, just really been a blessing in this case, because it's been so much fun, not just to have the games, but to see the code, to understand what it's doing and to work with it and kind of looking at some of the calculations. And I just would have never in my life imagined how many calculations go into something as what would seem as simple as just simulating sports.
One of the things I find interesting is how quickly the autoplay feature, and again, I'm specific to the baseball game, but
Hmm.
there's got to be a lot of calculations that happen just for one game,
Yep.
and how quickly you could sim an entire season.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It seems like as much as there is to calculate for that, it kind of, this day and age, the nice thing is where processing power has come, um, all those simulations and those autoplays, they're even faster than they were back in the day. And when I first started working on the code, um, I would talk to Lance a little bit because I had in my mind a sense of what I wanted to do with it, and where I felt like I had a good pulse on the community and what the fans were like and what they wanted. But talking to Lance, it was just like a bonus because I got a sense of what his priorities were. And he told me multiple times, like when he was making the games, the number one thing that drove him was to have it fast so that your results come back quickly, and to have it accurate. And I think, to that end, like there was actually a lot that he did to kind of go out of his way to find special compilers that would compile the basic code to be a little bit faster than like the Microsoft compilers. So he put a lot of time into researching that, and it's kind of nice that with these newer versions, like because they're optimized for modern processors, like they're 10, 20 times faster than the old games for DOS. So, not only was I trying to help people who were in DOS, but like I have been able to, like within an hour's period, simulate a couple seasons worth of data to actually like go back and test the accuracy of some of the data. And that's the kind of stuff that's kind of getting me excited about the future of the games, because I want to work on the accuracy part of it, the speed part. Like that was just by choosing essentially the compiler lets you write in basic, but behind the scenes it's actually converting everything to C++. So I mean that's what's used in most high level games. So like that is, I can't get much faster than that, and the compiler's doing that work for me. uh, but the accuracy, I know that's changed over the years. And back in the old days when they were first writing those games, that there was a lot of new ground that they were breaking, and continued to be that way. And there were ways you used to be able to kind of like cheat the games, and because they were just generating averages, and you could like use the same players over and over. But um, over the years, obviously that changed. But the accuracy, 20 years ago still isn't what it is with a lot of the games that have been able to kind of take off the ground since then. And a lot of the competitors, or what I'll say, the competitors, I really don't see myself competing with other games. This is kind of a community effort, a free effort, a fun effort for people to just enjoy the games. But I still look to, hey, what can I be? Well, I can be more efficient and better, calculations. So better accuracy. So just being able to simulate data and see, oh, hey, I noticed this trend here that seems wrong. Like I can see that kind of stuff in a way that would have taken weeks to do in years past.
I guess you're probably looking at again, once you have all the bugs ironed out with the porting the original games over, you're probably looking to do like you said with the rules. Obviously we're talking about 30 years worth of rule changes. A lot of stuff baseball wise has changed even in the last 5 years.
Yep.
So are you looking to incorporate the ghost runner and the Otani rule and all that fun stuff?
I'm looking to incorporate as much as I can. And on that end, especially with baseball, like one of the things I'm hoping is, as more people kind of find out about the games and where we're at with them, is that I'm really, like I said, I'm still kind of a computer person first. I love sports, but I don't know sports in and out technically. I kind of watch it more for enjoyment. Football's kind of different because I've been obsessed with football since a kid, but otherwise, like, I'm kind of looking at this as like, now it's out there, now it's out in the community. Not only can anybody look at it, or work with it or whatever else, but like also, um, I want people to be like, hey, this help me understand like what's different about the games. What should the games be doing? What are some of those weird quirks that people can kind of still exploit? For example, I know that with the baseball, I've been kind of told that, the way it kind of does the lineups, like you could have people that maybe had a couple at bats all year end up on the lineups quite a bit just because it's kind of randomized, and the contributions don't necessarily get factored in quite the same way they do with some of the other Haffner games. So yeah, there's a lot of things like that I want to work with, but I just kind of looking for people to tell me like, hey, what are those rules, and what do they look like, and how does that fit into the game? Because I kind of understand the technical, like the just the basic mechanics of the game. So yeah, I've got a lot of research to do. I've kind of got several notes about like just some of the high level rules, and was researching like the history of how the rules have changed. But yeah, everything out there. I mean, the more I can be informed on that stuff, I do. That's what I'm going to add to the games next year. That's my goal for next year. Is each one of those games, baseball included, is going to you're going to be able to play with rules that match modern times, and um, it's long overdue for all of the games.
One of the things I noticed is, it's, there's a lot of customization you can do. But I was wondering if one of the other considerations was the ability to maybe import data from like a baseball reference or some other yeah, layman database for baseball, as far
Sure.
as pulling in newer seasons or that type of thing.
Yeah. So I think for where I'm at with like, still kind of working with the games as they are and as they were kind of 20, 30 years ago. One of the things I've been doing, and actually one of the ways I got started in getting involved in Hafner games, before I even got the code, was kind of just being a programmer and learning a lot of stuff from my job that had to do with grabbing data from the web and pulling data down into files and things like that. I kind of made an effort to one of the first things I did was start working with writing code that could pull data from sports reference and kind of translate it into the files that people were already using for the games. So I spent a lot of time with that. It's actually one of the main things I've been working on this week, because with the baseball, I've got schedules, I've got teams. There's other guys in the community that work on the teams files, and but the one thing that we don't have is a lot of the league files. So I've actually been using that code to like create the league files so people can play and simulate those leagues with the teams as they would have been. I think Lance did a lot of that in the past and offered it on the discs, but nobody's really still has that kind of stuff in the community. So, but that's kind of the start of it, and that's where I think, I'm at this point, I'm still kind of trying to keep things kind of compatible between DOS and Windows, if that makes sense. And then I think looking ahead, I definitely want to not only, bring the games to Windows like I talked about, but I see something missing from a lot of games that I think I have the capability to bring to them, and that is being able to bring in that data and kind of bring it in live. And when I get to making the games for Windows, I think that's one of the things I really want to be able to do, because with that extra data, there's so much more you can add. Like right now, the only stuff I can calculate in the game is stuff that I have numbers for that are recorded in the files. And there's so many more stats that people track now for all the sports. Baseball, I know, is probably the biggest one. Football has really expanded a lot of the stats that they track too. But if you don't have those stats recorded in the files, you can't use that in the game. So I am looking ahead to that and to being able to do that, because I don't see anybody else doing that. I'm sure some of the major outlets like Dave Cook and them probably have some programs that they use behind the scenes to help them with that. But I'd be interested to know, because I think there are probably a lot of people still doing this by hand. And I was surprised some of the podcasts I've listened to with people that work with a lot of the data for these games do still do stuff by hand. And um, I think this day and age with the data being out there, like I'm gonna grab it and I'm gonna let the computer do what it can with it, and I'm gonna double check it. But yeah, that's kind of where I want to go, because I think that uh, takes a lot of work out of worrying about the data. I mean, I know back in the day, I know Lance used to spend months just entering the data by hand and checking it, and this guy's doing that now with spreadsheets that still take several weeks to get it done. So if I can do it at the click of a button, yeah, that's where I'm going, and I'm already doing it to some extent. So yeah, I do see myself integrating that with the games at some point.
You mentioned like the Windows interface. Are we talking kind of keeping the same? Because I like the graphical, the old VGA
Yep,
background
yep,
with the play-by-play and everything. But are you
yep.
talking about introducing like some type of point and click or drop-down menus, that type of thing?
Yeah, I think that's where I'd like to go, as I have time to kind of grow. And I know the thing with Lance's games, right, is people been happy with kind of the text interface as it is. So one of the things that I plan on doing is I do want to. I think it would help a lot if there were some more point and click stuff. But I don't want to make it fancy. I don't want to make a bunch of menus. I want to still make it simple. And there's a lot of options and menus in the games, but they're pretty much, you know, within a couple clicks, you can get to anything you want to do. And that's how I like my interfaces when I do stuff. And that's how I envision kind of the Windows being. So like I've almost, tried to think it out. Like if I can make the Windows versions kind of look, just like updated versions of the DOS games. I don't like, I know there's a lot of options. So obviously the challenge is how do you get that to people without everything being like a drop down from the menu bar? A lot of games do that. You got 50 options, there's 50 different things on the menu bar. You know, I don't want to do that. That's never the way that the games for DOS worked. And but yeah, the bringing the interface to Windows, I think would be like the ultimate achievement for kind of keeping these games fresh and giving them a new look. And the VGA screens, I'm kind of right there with you. Like I want people to also be able to use different screens to more easily add them, because right now it's a little clunky to kind of add custom screens. And I kind of want to add graphics to some of the other games too. Like I like the I like the idea of having the graphics and yet keeping it kind of simple. Um, that's kind of the balance I'm looking at trying to keep as I look ahead to what I'm going to do with the games. And that's like for example, like some of the football games that are there now, like I like I like kind of watching them because you can see players do stuff in formation and things like that. But I don't kind of really see that being, necessarily something that Haffner fans want. It just might be nice to have like some backgrounds with the team logos and, kind of an update, a nicer looking scoreboard that, putting text on the scoreboard is kind of complicated enough. And especially with baseball, there's so much to track. It just, if you have graphics, it looks nicer. So that's kind of what I want to do and be able to, you know, make it look a little bit more like other games.
So Jason, just a couple comments. One,
Sure.
if I could get into the code, man, I'd never lose. I'd wanted to figure
Yeah.
out how I could win every time.
Yep.
But that's just the competitiveness.
Yep.
Now, being I'm Canadian, most people don't know that, and I'm way up north here. Am I guessing right that that's an Eagles jersey?
Yep.
Okay, man. You guys, I mean, you boo Santa Claus, so you know I'm out when it comes to the Eagles. Um, but yeah, it sounds like you're undertaking quite the process, and
Yep.
um, I'm not overly familiar with the games, but I definitely, once you get them into Windows, I definitely will want to take a look at them.
Yep.
Um, kind of, I think we'll open it up unless there's some other area you want to jump into and talk about what you're going through, or we can open it up to questions.
No, not
I was
really.
just wondering, Jason, if I don't know if you have or if you were prepared to do this really, but maybe just a quick screen share for those who aren't familiar with the game, just kind of bring it up and do a quick demo for a few minutes.
That would be a great idea. I'm actually not on my main laptop that has those. So I think if I can quickly grab them, it might take me a few minutes, but
Yeah,
wait, okay. Yeah, I just had to remember where I have everything.
okay, no problem.
Um,
And I'll also mention while you're working on that, you know, that I found that there's quite the community on Facebook with the Lance Haffner Sports Games group.
mhm.
I know Philip, who's here, has quite a bit of involvement with that. So
Yep.
I don't know, Philip, if you wanted to chime in and say what your role is over in the group.
Sure. How you doing?
Hey, good.
I mean, it all started out with a group, I believe it was Yahoo groups at the time, which eventually went belly up, and there was a few people on there that used to share files and stuff like that. And then eventually it moved over to the Facebook side. And I originally got into that because I did enjoy the games, and that's how I learned that you could still play them with DOSBox. So I got into that, and I got to meet a few people. And one of the people I got to mention, he's not on the call, is Brian Wilson. He's probably the single person that keeps this whole thing alive because he does all the college basketball, the pro basketball, the football, and he every year gets them ready. I mean, I just was in contact with him today. He's got his whole spreadsheet as to what teams have finished playing football already, and he's working on the current teams that are in the bowls based on the statistics so that he can actually get a file with all the teams that are in a bowl game before the bowls actually start. And then he eventually just runs one with all the bowls just so everybody has an idea. But anyway, with that, everybody wanted, how do I get the game? How do I get the game? And at first, we never really were sure that we could just post the game because of copyright laws. And it was very difficult to get in touch with Lance. People tried and so forth and so on. And eventually, out of a clear blue sky, he's on Facebook, but he was never really that active. And one night I just said, you know what? I'm going to message him. And boom, he responded almost immediately. And I started talking to him. And I told him, he's, man, that would be great if you want to make everybody available for it. So we actually created a second group with just the files. And I basically have a Google Drive, one one spot for each of the games. And that's how I got involved with Jason. And we talked to Lance, and I tell you, the timing again was perfect. I talked to him and I said, hey, Jason wants to try and update your game so that they'll play. And he was all for that. And he said, well, let me find the source codes and I'll get them to you. And that's how it all started. We got the source codes. I got them to Jason. And I'm telling you, within a week, he called me back and he said, my drive crashed. It's all gone. Can you send them back to me? Which I was able to do. But if it was another week, they would have been gone and the source
Wow.
files would have been non-existent. And Jason's been great. I mean, even like he said, before he even got the source files, what he was doing was he had wrote a code, and I'm not a computer guy. I mean, I know computers as far as running whatever needs to be running, but I'm not a programmer. And he devised a script that could pull out of Baseball Reference. not baseball, the reference, baseball, basketball, football, the whole deal, and could pull the schedules and make a schedule for all the teams. And that's what he did. He started out making schedules for everything that would run in DOSBox. And that's how we started getting together. And then when I got the code, I told him about it, and the rest is history.
No, that's great. I think, like you said, I hadn't played this game since, mid 90s probably, and to stumble across it now, and that there's still quite the active community with it and people still want to play it. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's fun. I don't play as much as I used to because I have a granddaughter now who takes up most of my time. But
Sure.
I was trying to do some testing for Jason, and I don't really have a Windows machine. I got a Mac. However, my Mac is not compatible with his Mac version, so I haven't really played as much as I would like to. I'm still using DOSBox, to be honest with you. Well, one of these days I'll break down and get me a Windows machine.
Right. Okay. Jason, are
right,
you
so-
able to bring that up then?
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure what I have to click to share my screen. Oh wait, there's the button. It just went green. It wasn't green before.
Mark probably just gave you
Um,
permission to do that. So
Oh, okay. Make sure I get the right screen. So yeah, there we go. Oh wait, let's click share button and it actually shares it. So yeah, this is actually kind of the latest version that I'll be putting out here in the next few weeks or so. So you get to, not that there's much that's changed, but you'll get to, see some of the things I've been working on since kind of the last version I put out. And one of them is the menu. I think for as much went into the baseball games, the menus were still kind of behind the other ones. A lot of the options were off the first menu here, so I've kind of condensed everything the way that the other games already were. I don't know if we just want to like go through a game or if you have I'm not really sure like what to show off. I've been working with it so much. I kind of I guess really all I can do is kind of go through the game, but
I was just thinking, yeah, play single game and just,
Yeah.
let's just play an inning and just, just inning or
Yeah.
two and show
Yeah.
off
Yeah, for sure.
what it looks like.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and kind of one of the things I did with the new games that are coming out is these screens all look the same, but I kind of reorganized some of the options. In fact, again, with the baseball game kind of being behind in some ways, it used to have a separate screen for picking the teams. So I've actually updated it to where you can pick the teams on the screen. But I'm going to change to the computer as a visitor and going to pick the visiting team. And I don't want to do 220. Yeah, I'll do 221. I won't do, that's 2021. These are still the DOS names, so they still have the three digits or three characters for the extension. I'm going to start releasing files with 4 characters before too long. And I'm going to go ahead and pick Houston because I want to get some revenge. My Phillies. And pick a NL game. Not big on the designated hitter. Time of day, play by play, that's all good. I'm actually going to make sure I use injuries, and I don't think there's any left-right stats to worry about, but
So where it says
definitely got to
month,
get the VGA screens.
where it says month of April, right? Is that, if you changed October, is that affecting if it's
The
an outdoor
climate
stadium,
data.
the climate is affected, right?
Yeah, and obviously one of the things that I still want to do is the database for the climate data. I think it's like 6 months worth of climate data. So that data is 20, 30 years old. So at some point I want to kind of understand how that's stored and work on having a way to update that regularly and pull that information from different sources too, so that you can actually get, obviously the idea is, you can play the game with accurate weather, and I know it does affect the chance of rain, and because I've looked at the code for that in the last couple of weeks. So, that kind of stuff, considering a game can be called on account of rain, that stuff I want to, make accurate for the game. So yeah, I'm gonna pick nice hot blazing month, because that's when most people end up watching baseball. Um, what else did I want to do? The weather effects, I don't think will have much impact there. And yeah, time of day. Honestly, I do day games all the time, so I'm going to do an evening game because I don't get to see those evening screens that much when I play. I just kind of try to take the quickest route here, but so I'm going to start a game, and so with the rotations here, I pretty much just I just go through, kind of let the computer do it for me. And I'm going to just use the base starters here for everyone. And here's where I was working earlier today with the manual lineups. Actually going to kind of show that off a little bit, even though I'm not much with the lineups, because I have updated it since the DOS games to kind of make it a little bit more to understand. So I'm disabling, let's see. I'm just gonna, just for the fun, I'm just gonna disable a few people here, not for any particular reason. Just to kind of show that that's, how this kind of works. So now I have everyone else to pick from. I'm going to get Korea. So yeah, what I added here is like the manual used to have the first base, second base, third base. It had like a little table and what the numbers were that went with it. And the DOS game just had the numbers at the bottom here without the positions. So I added the ability for it to actually show you the positions, so it's easier to kind of pick. I'm not very invested in the manual lineups too much, so I'm just going to kind of randomly pick some things. Although I guess I could look at the stats a little bit, but let's see.
Hey, Jace, while you're doing that, I know
Yeah.
you selected no DH, but if you had selected DH, would it show you that it's 0 down the bottom?
Yep. You'd have the 0 and the DH above it. So base, I'm going to 4, 8. So yeah, obviously a lot of keyboard here, since that's one of the reasons I want to get to Windows 2, is not so much the graphics, but also just being able to use a mouse more. The original games did have some mouse support, but I think by the time that was really a thing, like in DOS days, everybody used a keyboard. You kind of had to. Took people a while to get used to using a mouse. I once read an article when I was young that at the time I didn't realize was satire, but they talked about the keyboards and versus mice, and how like nobody needs a mice on a computer, and all these things that were being added to computer, how they weren't really helping anybody. And I was like so clueless to the fact that they were like you know uh, joking, because of how helpful that all that technology has been. So like I was a keyboard person for such a long time. Let's see, who else can I pick? I've got oh wait, I've got to pick the position. And then let's see, and no changes there. I'm not going to save anything here. I'll save everybody the trouble. Kind of go through automatic lineup, which is one of the things that impressed me with the with with the game when I first played it was the way that it had to calculate a lineup, because I always thought you had to pick a manual lineup, and you don't. So, oh, starting with Harper. Harper's at the first one. So kind of kind of interesting there, because being a local person to the area, I started going to Senators games 10 years ago or so when Harper was on the Senators. So I only didn't go to a lot of games, but like his name is still all over the place there. And of course he was very impressive, and went on to be very successful with the Phillies and still is. But it was kind of interesting how that worked out, because obviously the Senators were paired with Washington on the pro side, but those things go whichever way the players and the money goes. So yeah, the strike three thing is what I'm still trying to figure out. Like there wasn't a strike one or two, and I don't understand. That's one thing that I got to figure out. The code for strikes.
Yeah, I'm curious whether, there's a number of games where you have the option for one pitch or full at bat. So this might just be,
Yeah,
just resolving, whatever
yeah,
the pitch that resulted in an outcome, like, a hit or a walk or,
yeah.
hit bat or whatever. So, and just for whoever's not familiar, right, the bottom left corner, that's that's showing you your options. So
Yeah,
right, most of the time you're just
yep,
hitting like option one, which is pitch
yep,
or
yep,
hit away, right?
yep, yep. And here we have intentional walk, obviously your infield, corners, personnel, different stats, and your runner status. You can hold the runners. Yeah, I guess it's my turn. So now gonna pitch. This is the part that usually seems to go the fastest. This is also, as you can see, the play-by-play is the very, very quick, short bursts of text, which of course most games actually do now. A lot of the other Haffner games are still kind of like a little bit more verbose with their play-by-play, and so it's kind of, again, one of those things that he was definitely forward thinking on with the baseball game, and having like the quicker, more action based play-by-play. Yeah, and of course, obviously, it shows you the fielding averages for each of the positions in the field, and like if you notice the even though it's all text based, right, there was still thought put into, Bugatti is batting from the left side of the plate here, and when somebody that's used to batting on the right, they'll show up on the right side. So, just little things like that most games cover, but sometimes when I think it's really easy when you deal with numbers and stats that kind of easy to forget the things like that add to a sense of realism for the game. So I'm just basically going through this mostly hitting, just hitting number one, because I'm not getting a lot of progress here, but but that's the thing. I'll simulate games, and sometimes you'll get those games that are 13-3 or 10-1. Seen a lot of Senators games go that way. Seen a lot of games with a local team in Lancaster, the Barnstormers. And then of course you'll just have these games like this that are just really close, which I would kind of expect here. I was really really nail biting to watch the World Series. We almost had that one. So yeah, and I guess I can show off some of the for this because a lot of people may not have played. Like the SDBP at the bottom, like you can get your split stats here. So I can see all the different stats for the batter and the pitcher that are up at the moment. So gives you a sense of your strategy. I can get detailed stats for the teams, which is pretty much, this is one thing that you really hasn't been integrated into the other games yet that I was really impressed with, that essentially we're viewing the roster and the stats for that roster in kind of real time. So at this point, this is for the game and the progress in the game. So, well, let's see, that's the season. Yeah, it gives you the season, and then hasn't been much in the game yet, but you get that head to head during the game. I would love to get that. I would love to get that in the other games where you can see some of that live comparisons. So,
And like you said, that might be something when you get the Windows integration a bit further, where
yeah,
you get a like a hotkey and maybe just a pop-up window rather than having to pop into a menu and select it separately, right?
yeah. So yeah, I'm not going to change a pitcher here, but this is the other thing. Like you could do the relief pitchers, your batter, fielders. When to resume play. Something else I'm going to also show, because this is going to be part of all the games now. But it started with baseball first, and baseball was the only game that had it. And that is, we've been playing with the standard 1.2 seconds delay time. If I press the O button, the O key, this is going to be document and manual. I can actually change not only which in the middle of the game, which team is playing. I can go computer versus computer, so I don't have to press as many keys, but I can also change the delay, so I can speed things up or slow things down a little bit. It's kind of interesting for me to think that that was always there since the 90s in the baseball game, and the other games didn't have it. So it's a really easy thing, and all the other games now, when I release those versions coming up in the next couple of weeks, they're all going to have this. Like, I like being able to, if watch parts of a game and maybe like simulate the rest. Kind of depends on what I'm doing. So I'm going to just set it there for computer versus computer. Of course, now all those options go away because we don't have to press those keys, but I slowed it down a little bit because even with the 1.2, I think it was a little bit fast, but yeah, see, now Jones is on base and now he's out. So yeah, a lot of options that were there that just really kind of inspired me to think about how much effort I could put into the other games too. And like the climate data and the weather data, like that has me thinking of how great that would be to kind of implement. And once I understand it and update it, to implement that in the football. And the football game pretty much has, is it a blizzard or is it a little bit of rain or what have you, but honestly, it's rarely that extreme of temperatures in football. Like either it's cold or it's like a little bit of rain or like a little bit of snow. Sometimes it's a blizzard, but like, it's a lot more nuanced than a lot of the options that are there now. So I'd love to get that historical data and be able to do that for football as well, and have like, I know a lot of the competitors, a lot of the products that you pay for, they have that ability. This is still all zeros.
You'll
Of
have to
course, these were
implement
two great teams.
for the football. You'll have to implement the what was it in the Patriots game where the guy came out with the snowplow so the place kicker could kick the field goal.
Yes. Oh, you laugh and it is funny, but like one of the nice things about having the code and being able to work with it, right, is as the sports change, I can update it. And like one of the things, like as much as it's kind of exaggerated or funny to talk about, it's also kind of serious. Like with the NFL, like for eternity, a quarterback sneak was a quarterback sneak, and it was everybody line up, put the quarterback behind, try to make a hole for the skinny little quarterback to get through. And if he was able to get through, he got through. And, you know, I just happen to be an Eagles fan, but, you know, the talk is all about the tush push and, or the brotherly shove, as they call it, which that's a very different approach to a quarterback sneak. Instead of just, let's see if our little skinny guy can get through a hole, that it's a coordinated attempt to say, okay, we've got a bunch of strong players in different positions. Like, let's use their strengths and strategically, let's see if we can get more out of a sneak than just does our skinny little quarterback get through the hole. It's actually like Jalen Hurts driving with his legs really low and everybody kind of, you know, pushing him forward. And lo and behold, instead of it being a roll of the dice whether you get a yard or not, 90% of the time they're getting a yard and a half, 2 yards out of a quarterback sneak. And that's like, now that I have access to the code, like that stuff I can put in the games. It's like that's stuff that wouldn't be there. Like it wouldn't be fair to not only Jalen Hurts, but a lot of the other very mobile quarterbacks if the replays weren't accurate to their abilities and their styles. And kind of what I've played of the football game so far, I think there's a good amount of accuracy there with a lot of the scrambling quarterbacks, but it's not everything it could be. The game asks you for mobility, and that does factor into the average running yards that they're going to get from a scramble, but there's still some improvements to make there. So between things like that and just the way that like more quarterbacks are becoming bigger scramblers and everything else, you know, there's room to see that improve. And now I can do that. And I don't know if the brotherly shove is going to be something that the league's going to, you know, come down on or not. But like, you know, I'm going to, you know, maybe consider it an Easter egg at first, but really, you know, it's all part of now I can figure out how do I make these games more accurate to the replays, because some areas they're accurate, some areas they're not. The college basketball game is supremely accurate, amazingly accurate for when it was created. Like even today, it still holds up. The accuracy, somehow just the pacing of the shots and everything, or what he just got down really well. In the basketball game, the pro basketball game never got that kind of love out of it. I think everyone's interest is so much in the college basketball that the pro basketball game kind of got neglected a little bit. But like I've been working on the accuracy there too, and I'm able to do that by actually having access to the calculations and the numbers, and you know, allowing that. And of course, you know, not to completely ignore the fact either that, like, you know, it was kind of joked about at the beginning of the meeting about, you know, if you had access to the code, right, everybody would want to cheat. Well, I do think one of the things that would be nice to do is kind of build in little Easter eggs and cheat codes and things like that too. So, you know, aside from adding accuracy to the games too, it might be fun to put things in there that you know, give people a sense to find something that's relevant to the games, obviously relevant to the sport. You know, the play-by-play for the college basketball game I know has a lot of different lines from Dick Vitale, and it's like that kind of thing. You know, I'd love to like do more of that. Like, okay, like one of the things I think that's missing from the football play-by-play is the Chris Berman and he could go all the way. It's like those little things that, like, if I could put that in the game, that somebody can see it and recognize it and pick up on it, or maybe there's an option that, you know, you have to get to by kind of just knowing something about the team that you're working with, or just something odd like that. It'd be fun. All that opens up now. So looks like my Phillies are ahead. Of course,
I was
World
going to say
Series was 7
along
games.
those lines with maybe like a user. I don't know if this is a feature already in the game or not. I don't believe it is, but a play-by-play editor that would allow the user to add their own play-by-play or share them with others, or.
Yeah, that is not a feature right now, but I certainly, in kind of troubleshooting the games, one of the things that I've done is had to, when there's a bug, I have to figure out where is that bug and what line of code is it, because there's thousands of lines of code that go into the flow of the game. And so what I did early on was I came up with kind of a routine that when play-by-play is being called, like, it writes that to a file. And that got me thinking about all the things I can do with play-by-play. And like, obviously I know some games you can save your play-by-play, so that's one of the things I think I could probably easily do within the next couple months. I mean, pretty much was what I was doing to figure out where I'm at in the game. Like, when the games would freeze, the only way that I would know where it was at was by the play-by-play, unless I'm going to press a key 10,000 times to get to the one place where there's an error. So definitely going to be able to write play-by-play out. And then, of course, I think obviously I want to keep the classic Haffner play-by-play, but I've been thinking about new play-by-play approaches for each of the games, especially the football and the basketball. And I think when I can get there, I definitely see the benefit, and also having that being something customizable. I know most other games let you do it, but I can see it because, like, right now, when I was first looking to get into these games, there were some aspects of the football play-by-play that I wasn't really crazy about, or they were very repetitive with. And I couldn't find any way to do that. And I was like, I would have gotten so much more probably out of the games if I had been able to kind of customize that. It was all hard coded into the game. So I will say the play-by-play for baseball, when I got the code, I was trying to understand, why does it say it's revised play-by-play, or new play-by-play is what it was called in the code, and found out essentially that was his first effort at taking the play-by-play out of the code and putting it into a file. So that actually is a text file that you can edit for baseball. It is not very easy to edit because it's like your first 10, 20, 30 entries are for very specific situations in the game, and then like your next 50 play-by-play entries are for very specific places in the game. So if you get things out of order, if you change the wrong thing, you're gonna have weird stuff happen at the wrong time. But that kind of was like what gave me the hope, or the insight that, like, hey, this is probably the way to go for play-by-play with the other games. Like, again, this was his flagship game, and this is where he was putting a lot of new ideas into that just never made it to the other games. So I do want to do that for the other games, and I think that will help, because I can think of play-by-play one way, but everybody's got a different style. And I think if I can come up with what that looks like, definitely going to implement that in the future.
Jason, Sean put a screenshot into the chat about an issue he's having. Something about configuring drives or something. Maybe you could just look real quick, and if something pops in your head, great. If not, would he be able to get a hold of you through the Facebook group?
Yeah, I didn't mean to make
Okay. So yeah, this is a simple one. So This actually carries over into the DOS game, which is why I was so puzzled with it when people started reporting it. When you go into the screen for configuring drives, um, it's a special routine that was created separately from the menus that is trying to keep track of the numlock and the caps lock key. So it has, you can, in the screenshot in the little bottom is a numlock. It looks like the numlock is on. There's something with the code that when you go in and numlock is on or caps lock is on, it will flood the screen with gray, and so the screen to the user just looks completely gray. And if you are able to close the game, open it back up, and go in without the caps lock or numlock on, you will be able to configure the drives. Now I know very much about this, not only because people reported it, but because 3 to 4 weeks ago, I actually dug into the code of what was causing it, and I actually fixed it. And there was something with the printing, of the cursors in the regular game. I can probably even show you here since this game's over. I'm gonna go through the stats here.
Sean's saying he had numlock on and it solved it, so that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, if you go into the configured drives here, these gray bars, what it was doing is there was something in the code that was when the caps lock or numlock was on, it was trying to print cap and num down here at the bottom, but there was something that was forcing it to print the gray over and over and over again, almost in a loop, and it wouldn't stop printing the gray. So eventually the whole screen goes gray. And I've actually, the versions that are coming out in the next couple of weeks, I've actually got that fixed. That is kind of a bug that goes back to the DOS version. So actually you can tell here. Yeah, I'm going to say that's okay. Yeah, so that will do it. And going forward, like I said, that's fixed. Obviously, I think with the versions, not this very next release that I'll have in the next week or so, but probably in the spring, my next releases that are going to have a lot more of the rules updates and things like that. That is going to be, I think I'm also going to look at, a lot of people had troubles in DOS just because they had to learn how to use DOSBox to play these games. But then also when I brought them to Windows, a lot of people had trouble just because this is all text-based. And I think for the configured drives and stuff like that, it's a little kind of jarring, in the modern time to still kind of have that, like to be thinking about typing in your paths, because, in the DOS days, you just didn't have that many paths. You didn't have that many folders, and you try to keep everything short, simple, and easy to type out. So one of the things I am going to do is try to change this to use pop-up file explorers. In fact, the QB64 program that I write everything in still looks like a DOS program when you open it, but when you do file open, it uses the modern Windows dialog boxes to pick files. So it's something very easy to add, and something I plan on adding. I will say for those of you out there that the games aren't at this point yet, I always tell people just out of a habit for to be safe to go into the configure drives option. If you download the games as they are right now, and most people do not create a lot of folders. They just kind of put all the games and all the files in one place. The way the games are designed right now is if you just dump everything in one folder, whatever folder you're running the game from, it's going to look for all the files in that folder. So that should help a lot of people looking to get started. Because you really don't have to do a lot with the configure drives. Where the configure drives is definitely the most helpful is for people like Philip and myself, that we would have we would actually have a folder here for teams that would be, uh, you know, C desktop Haffner baseball teams, and then we could have a folder for stats and a folder for leaders. And we like to, like to keep those things tidy and organized and all separated out. So that's where this is helpful for. But if you're not someone who organizes all your stuff that way, one thing I did try to do is make sure that the game was, if you didn't really organize that much, double click, it'll look for everything in the same folder. You don't have, like, you didn't have to go and create those configs.
Okay, I'm getting conscious of our going over time here.
Sure.
I'll just put it out. Is anybody got a burning question they want to ask Jason?
Hey, just to be funny, I got one question. When you do
Yep.
the play-by-play, are you gonna also do it in French for the Canadians?
Easy now. We lost the Expos many years ago.
Uh,
Not trying to be just thought I'd be funny,
Yeah.
that's all.
yeah. Well, that's the nice thing about driving it from a text file, though, is it could be any language, anything. We could make it in Gen Z speak.
Jason, can you hear me?
Yep.
I really, this is awesome stuff, man. This is great work.
Good.
I've been waiting for a Windows version of this forever, but I played for all the time as a kid. But just
Cool.
really two quick questions. One is,
Sure.
is there an option to be able to change the window size while you're playing, or do you need to play it at the small size?
So everything in the DOS versions were all written pretty much to use screen mode 0, which pretty much translates to text mode. So even though you're seeing things on the screen, it's all in 80 columns by 25 rows. So there was really nothing to resize. So that being said, with the way that the QB64 works, everything that you compile with it, it builds in the ability, you can at least change your screen here. So like I can't resize this, but if I do Alt Enter, I can get full screen.
Okay.
And of course you can see that's stretches things a little bit. So if I do Alt Enter again, it'll actually smooth it over. And if I do Alt Enter, then it'll kind of shrink it in a little bit more. And then eventually come back to the window. So you can go full screen or you can go window, but the size of that window doesn't change at this point because the size of the text mode in DOS never changed. It was, if you wanted to do graphics, you had to do special graphics modes, and none of those were ever really implemented in these. So obviously, with Windows, it's kind of irrelevant because the Windows does all your different graphics modes, and all you have to do is say, put this here and put this 50 to the right and 10 down and that kind of thing. So it's a little bit easier in Windows to resize things, but
Awesome. And then you said the print function will print to printers now. Like I could print it to my, if I want to print the stats, it'll print direct. I can set it up to print to my printer, or does it?
Yeah. So if the print options currently will, with the way things are in QB64, you'll get stuff sent to your default printer. If you go directly by the wording in the manual, it says it has to be a USB printer. In my experience, like network printers will work also. Now that is just for Windows. One of the things that I haven't I don't really have a printer to test for Linux or Mac, but the documentation makes it pretty clear for the QB64 editor, at least, that to print to Mac and Linux, you pretty much have to connect to the printer like it's a network printer and send network commands to it. So that's something that I don't have right now. Obviously, I want to test that some and see how accurate that is and work on that. But essentially, we're still working with BASIC. So BASIC is still limited in how it can communicate with the hardware. So for the Windows, at least, it should go to your default, whatever your default printer is.
Cool deal. Great job. Great
Yep,
job, buddy.
yep. And hopefully I still have all the print outputs going in black and white. There was a while where that these, the screens are changing colors here as you go into different menus, and there was a while where some of the outputs were actually printing in that color. So I had to do a lot of work to like make sure everywhere that it was printing that I was keeping the color black text on white background, because it just looked really bad otherwise. But
Cool. Thanks for the answer.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think we're gonna call her a night. Just a couple of announcements. I always let Derek chime in before we call it quits, because I usually miss something. If you're following us on Facebook, you'll see some postings from Andy, and I can't think of his last name. I know it starts with a P.
Palomino.
Palomino, there you go. He is doing some work and running some things called Sim Auction. I had a chance to participate, as did Derek. Derek's participated a few times. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of fantasy meets simulation, and it takes a bit of time to go through. But if you're looking for a challenge and you got an afternoon available to do part of the auction aspect, I'd recommend it. Second, I'd like to thank Jason for coming and sharing lots of stuff. He talks about programming in BASIC, and I actually remember doing a little bit of that when I was in high school. So that shows how old I am. It's quite interesting, although some of the code stuff, I'm a CPA, so I start glozing over, but that's okay. And before I give it to Derek, I'm just going to say, go Giants.
Well, I just wanted to share, I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is the manual from 6.0. Anybody's familiar with it?
Yep.
So I do have my old 3.5 floppies from that one, but disk 2 failed. So Philip and everybody who worked to make those files available in DOSBox, I came across that a year or two ago. So thankfully I was in the midst of trying to review the game, and I couldn't get it loaded on my machine. And so thankfully, those files were out there.
Well, that's good that you still have the manuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, the scans are a little off, but that's why if you download the games, I'm including redone manuals too. So I don't know if you've seen that or not, but I've got new graphics and everything and updating the manuals. But yeah, it's nice to have those in original. I think I only have the football one.
So appreciate you coming on. This is great. I'm glad to see that this game is still around, and that you're working to revive it and enhance it. So looking forward to seeing what you come up with in the next year or two.
Thanks.
Definitely keep me posted. We can share some of the updates as they become available. Definitely be happy to share them with our group here.
Yep.
I think that's all I got for tonight. I think we're not gonna have a December meeting, and we're looking at getting some more guests on early 2024. So
great.
I guess until then, happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us tonight.
Same to you.
He's a Philadelphia fan. They boo Santa. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well,
Why
I
do you think I'm
don't
cheering for the
care much
Giants
for
now?
December anyway.
You know what?
care
I
much
don't
for
really
Christmas.
follow a lot of NFL, so I just knew the Eagles' biggest
Our
team
fans
they
are
hate is
extreme.
the Giants, so of course I had to say.
Cowboys are really our bigger rival right now. The Giants are sucking this year, but
Thank you.
yeah.
But we beat the Patriots, and that's all that really matters.
Everybody hates the Cowboys, so I mean that's
that's true. That's true. They're playing right now. Hope they're getting their butts handed to them, but
I mean,
We'll
my
see
my
how-
favorite football team hasn't been relevant since I think like 1992. So Washington.
Washington.
I don't even
Oh,
know what they call them anymore, but
oh,
yeah,
Commanders. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just
Well,
like your baseball team.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Washington's been a
Angels fan.
mess because of leadership. They finally got rid of the leadership, and hopefully they'll be a better team going forward. But they still got a lot to work out to get there. But at least they got rid of their leadership. That's what was holding them back.
Yeah. No, I watched them, Theismann, Riggins, Art Monk,
Mhm.
those guys.
Yep.
And yeah, I honestly I probably couldn't name 5 guys on their team anymore. I can't even watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have
Yeah.
to say growing up, I was a 49ers fan.
Yep.
And a Bucks fan, but beyond that,
Okay.
yeah, I might watch the
Yeah.
Super Bowl. I might
Mhm.
not.
Yeah. I grew up in the Niners too. Actually, that was my number one team. It's kind of like shifted to, I guess, my number 2, number 3 team. But yeah, Niners I was obsessed with them growing up. So kind of always kind of liked the Eagles, but it wasn't until I moved to this area that I realized, yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, you can say what you will, but essentially our fans really are insane. Like the noise in the stadium is the worst of anywhere else. And the fans, yeah, I don't, not surprised if they booed Santa Claus. They would boo anybody that's not helping the Eagles win a game. They are extreme, and you better not even wear another jersey in that stadium, or you're gonna. I hear stories. I haven't even been to the games. I just hear stories from people who have. We've got some of the toughest fans in the league. They're just extreme. They love the town and they love the team.
Passionate is good,
Yep.
you know.
Okay, guys. Well, thanks for
All right.
coming.
Mhm.
Keep following us on Twitter, and if you're not
Yep.
members of SABR, consider it. The yearly fee is really not that expensive. And you get lots and lots and lots of stuff. Right. I mean, you have access to a whole bunch of free books, using an e-reader or other stuff. Just so much. It's like information overload. So, and you also get to meet other people who share passions in specific areas that you do. So, okay. Well,
Yeah, the
everybody have a good,
conferences are great. So
yeah, the
as well.
conferences are great. Have a good holiday. Merry Christmas or whatever you may celebrate. And we'll see you in the new year.
Same to you guys.
Thank
All
you.
right, guys.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Have a good night.
Mhm.
Night.